Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries, and I thank you for joining me for Wednesday's edition of End of the Age. Oh my goodness. We have such a historical day today. What an awesome experience it was to sit through Donald Trump's speech announcing that the United States officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I say thank you very much, Donald Trump. You are my president. I'm proud to be an American today. And I tell you what, 3 o'clock couldn't get here fast enough for me to be able to talk to you guys and tell you exactly what's going on the world stage, really, as a result of this. Prophetic implications, secular implications. What's really going on right now? My daughter stopped, Holly, many of you know her, Holly Brewer, works here at End Time. She stopped by my office and said, "Hey, Dad, are you going to be talking about Donald Trump's speech?" I said, "No, absolutely not." And you should have seen the look that she gave me, like, "You've got to be kidding me." Listen, folks, this is what everybody is talking about. And so that's what my program is devoted to today. Donald Trump's speech. Now, Donald Trump just said, and if you didn't get to hear the speech, you need to go back and listen to it or at least read the text. What a historical, awesome moment in time when the United States of America finally recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital, and now we're going to move the embassy. So let's talk about it. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel." What sweet words coming from the President of the United States' mouth. We've waited for it for years. It never came, never came, never came. And today, December 6th, 2017, we finally heard it. Taking a stand with Israel. It's easy to say we stand with Israel, and then your actions show something different. But when you say we stand with Israel, and yes, we will recognize Jerusalem as your eternal capital, now you're taking a stand. Something that people can wrap their mind around and say, this guy really is taking a stand with Israel. And I was so thankful for that, because I promise you, through the next few years, the United States will want to be aligned with Israel in God's eyes. And so, of course, Donald Trump not only said, "I will recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital," but that he will begin the process of moving the United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I almost didn't expect this before the speech. I thought he would go part way. He said, "Nah, I'm going all the way. I'm going to recognize Jerusalem, and I'm going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Let's go ahead and go for it." And so he stated, and I quote, "That is why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I, Donald Trump, am also directing this State Department to begin preparation to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and this will immediately begin the process of hiring architects, engineers, planners, so that a new embassy, when completed, will be a magnificent tribute to peace." What a momentous time in our country. I can't say it enough. I can't stop smiling. I almost wore my Donald Trump Make America Great Again hat if I had one. Although I think my father-in-law may have got on me for that. But you may see a little different side to Dave Robbins today. Sometimes I act a little stoic and, serious on the program. But I'm giddy almost. Like I tell everybody in the office, I'm doing cartwheels inside. You just can't see it. Because I'm so thankful to be living in this country that will align with Israel and recognize Jerusalem, the biblical capital of Israel, given to them by God. And so we're going to talk about that today. And really, honestly, Donald Trump took a biblically correct stance on Jerusalem today. And I know that even this last election, many evangelicals voted for Trump because they thought he might lead them down the paths of not every decision that he makes, but many of the decisions towards a biblically correct stance. Well, I'm telling you, today was absolutely one of those decisions and the announcement. So, I got to say, I'm very proud to be American today. I may say it again before the program's over with. Because, man, I'm proud to be a Texan, and I'm proud to be an American. I'm happy. I'm proud to be saved and going to heaven when the Lord comes back. So I don't know if you could get any happier than that. And I've also got an awesome, beautiful wife. So, man, tell me, think I'm not blessed? I'm a bald guy that's got a beautiful wife. Go figure. So, all I got to say is thank you, Mr. Trump, for taking this stand with Israel. So I know the question on everyone's mind is, what does all of this mean? What's so important, etc.? There's so many questions. Well, in order to answer some of those questions, let's discuss the secular and the prophetic implications of Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It's on everybody's mind. And so let's dive off into it, but I've got to give you some history. If you don't understand the history, it's impossible to understand how important what just happened is. So, one of the first questions I want to cover is, could this lead to the sixth trumpet war? Now, that would be speculation at this point. Global leaders and all over the world and other international personalities, they are furious. Donald Trump's getting all kinds of blowback over the decision, including, really, but not limited to, the Pope and diplomats from the United Kingdom, Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, the Palestinians. He's getting so much blowback because he stood in the face of the international community and said, I know that you all don't want me to do this, but I'm standing with Israel. And I'm thankful to be in a country where the president would do that. The Turkish government's spokesman said that the United States' decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is going to plunge the region and really the world into a fire with no end in sight. So I'm not quite sure today if this decision could escalate into the sixth trumpet war. Because of all the conflict that may arise. Some people are saying, hey, we're going to have a day of rage and a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that would escalate into the sixth trumpet war. We know the sixth trumpet war is happening. Could this announcement and us moving our embassy to Jerusalem spark that? That would be speculation on my part. However, we do know where all of this talk about the status of the city of Jerusalem is leading us. And that's what I want to really focus on today. I could go down all kinds of different avenues, but I want to focus on the main point. I'm going to step back and look at the big picture. All of these events really make it seem like we're in a huge funnel that's leading us straight towards the Battle of Armageddon. It's very important that we understand that. The peace agreement will end, the interim peace agreement is going to end at the Battle of Armageddon. The final 7 years ends with the second coming of Jesus Christ, the Battle of Armageddon. The United States standing in the face of the international community. That's the whole crux of why the Battle of Armageddon occurs. It's about the status of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. That's why the armies of the world, the international, the world governmental armies come down against Jerusalem to battle. So, in order for me to explain this, let me give you the secular side. And then I'll get off into the prophetic side before the end of the program. Probably the last 30 minutes, I might get into it in this segment, but probably the last 30 minutes will be devoted to the prophetic. So the secular side, CNN reported, why is declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel so controversial? So this is from the international community's eyes. Not End Time Ministries, not Israel, and now not Donald Trump, but this is the United Nations. So the United Nations partition, the plan that was drawn up in 1947, really envisioned Jerusalem as a separate international city. But the war that followed Israel's declaration of independence 1 year later left the city divided. And when the fighting ended in 1949, the armistice border, often called the Green Line. If you read the news all the time, they talk about we need to go back to the Green Line. Well, that's what they're talking about, because it was drawn in green ink, but it's kept the terminology Green Line all the way till today in the news. And that saw Israel in control of the western half and Jordan in control of the eastern half, which included the famous Old City. Though if you go there today, it's the one with the huge stone wall all the way around it. That was in the eastern side. Well, so when did that status change? Well, during the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel captured East Jerusalem. They drove the Jordanians back across the Jordan River, captured East Jerusalem, and since then, all the city has been under Israel's authority. You go there today, and Israel controls the whole city. There are people in the West Bank, Arabs and different things, but Israel, I promise you, if you see somebody carrying a machine gun in Jerusalem today, it's an Israeli soldier. Okay, so it's under Israel's authority. The city marks Jerusalem Day in late May or early June, but the Palestinians and many other in the international community, they continue to see East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. So you've got the whole international community and Israel, and the Palestinians that view East Jerusalem as the capital for a future Palestinian state. As of today, there are two entities that view that as the eternal capital of Israel. Israel and now the United States. So I'm kind of forming a picture. How important is what happened today? It's of utmost importance. So the Jerusalem law, passed in 1980 and amended in 2000, states that no authority that is stipulated in the law of the State of Israel or the Jerusalem municipality may be transferred either permanently or for an allotted period of time to a foreign body, whether political, governmental, or to any other similar type of foreign body. So Israel can't be divided, is what it's saying. And then Israel annexed East Jerusalem in 1980, but the move has not been recognized internationally, and most countries refuse to recognize any part of the city as Israel's capital, saying it was an issue that will need to be decided in negotiations with the Palestinians. And this is what how the international community up until, and they still do, now the United States doesn't obviously, but they still do today. And if you remember, talking about the United Nations, which is the seat of world government in the earth today. The UN Security Council, Resolution 2334. We talked about it many times on the radio. December 23rd, 2016. It's the resolution that Obama withheld the United States vote for. That reaffirms that the establishment by Israel of the settlements in Palestinian territory occupied in 1967, which it's not Palestinian territory, but that's kind of their terminology, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity, and it constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of a two-state solution and a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. Now, President Obama allowed that to pass. We could have vetoed that. We didn't. We allowed that to pass, that resolution. President Obama's administration abstained because that's what he believed. Now, that's what I said earlier. When somebody says, I stand with Israel, but yet their actions say something different. Big difference. So, item number 1 of the UN Security Council Resolution 2334 clearly states that Israel's presence in East Jerusalem is illegal and a flagrant violation of international law. Then the Jerusalem Post reported last Thursday that the UN, and you say, well, they're letting it drop. That's happened latter part of last year. No. The UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly just this last Thursday, get this, to disavow Israeli ties to Jerusalem as part of 6 anti-Israel resolutions that it approved in New York. The vote was 151 in favor, 6 against, with 9 abstentions. So the resolution stated that any actions taken by Israel, they call them the occupying power, to impose its laws, jurisdiction, and administration on the holy city of Jerusalem are illegal in the eyes of the international community and therefore null and void and have no validity whatsoever. This was just last Thursday. So these words really fall in line with similar resolutions approved in 2015, 2016 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organizations, or UNESCO, including the resolution's omission of the title Temple Mount. It's the Temple Mount, folks, but the international community is saying, nah, don't agree with that. And they want to use instead only the Arabic term for the site, Haram el-Sharif. No, come on. It's the Temple Mount. And so I'm going to call it the Temple Mount. You say, well, you're not being politically correct. I'm going to be biblically correct. So needless to say, the international community or world government is against Israel's right to the city of Jerusalem. The Pope actually weighed in and told thousands of people at his general audience, he said, I can't keep quiet about my deep worry about the situation that has been created in the last few days. He said, I make a heartfelt appeal so that all commit themselves to respecting the status quo of the city, get this, in conformity with the pertinent resolutions of the United Nations. So the Pope is saying, I am going along with, we need to recognize the resolutions of the United Nations, and I'm not agreeing with that. I absolutely don't agree with that. I'm going along with what the Bible says. The Bible says Israel owns the Temple Mount, owns Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. That's what I'm going with. What the international community thinks is irrelevant to me. I'm going with what God says and what the Word of God says. That's what we're going to go with. And you never go wrong by doing what's right. And that's why I was so happy about what President Trump did. Because we've got the leader of our country saying, we're standing with Israel. It's biblical, it's scriptural, and that's what we're going with. We're standing with Jerusalem as the capital. And I was so thankful again for that today. So really, I wanted to set the stage for the rest of today's program. And now you can kind of see why Donald Trump's decision, you see what the international community feels about Jerusalem. Now you can see how important Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move the embassy, why it's such a big deal from a secular viewpoint. They're screaming about it like they screamed when he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement and talked about that NATO should pay their fair share and all these other different things. They are screaming about it. They can't stand it because Donald Trump doesn't want to play ball with the world government. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. However, the prophetic implications of President Trump's announcement, they are much more important than what the international community thinks. So, what does all this mean? Well, number one, the U.S. could be kicked. I've saw articles where the U.S. they can't be part of the peace agreement anymore. Well, that's a good thing. Palestinian officials have said that the prospects of both the U.S. recognition of Jerusalem and Israel's capital and the relocation of the American embassy in Israel would spell the end of America's role as an interlocutor in the peace process between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Well, that's a very, very good thing. It's against the will of God for Israel to trade the promised land for peace. You say, well, they're going to have a peace agreement. They absolutely will sign a peace agreement. But we don't want our government, i.e. the United States, to be part of helping them do that or pushing them to do that in any way. So if the U.S. is taken out of that loop, I'm happy about that. That's great. Because we don't want that. You don't want to bring the wrath of God down on you for coercing Israel to trade land for peace. So if they kick Donald Trump out of the peace agreement, now I know during his speech he said, I would love to be the one that, we're still going to have our fingers in getting a peace agreement signed. I hope we don't have anything to do with it, honestly. I hope we bail from that process. Let the European Union or somebody like that take it over and do it. We know that's where the Antichrist has got to come from anyway. So it's very important that we understand really what's going on here from a prophetic standpoint. If you didn't understand prophecy, you wouldn't even be thinking in these terms. All you'd be thinking of is, Donald Trump doesn't want to play ball with the international community and the world government. That's what all these people are screaming about. But we're looking at it from a prophetic perspective, and there's a whole wide range of things that come into play here. So it's very important. I don't want the United States to be involved in getting Israel to trade land for peace. So the U.S. and Israel against world government. It's very important. It's prophecy fulfilled. Revelation 12:14 says, and to the woman, Israel in that chapter, were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for times and half a time from the face of the serpent. Okay, so in Revelation chapter 12, the serpent is Satan. There's a war in heaven. He's bound to the earth. He comes down, and the Bible says at that point, it's a future war, that he persecutes Israel and the church, those that have the testimony of Jesus Christ for times and half a times, or that final 3.5 years prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon. In Revelation 12:14, it says, and that to Israel, to the woman, were given 2 wings of a great eagle, where she is protected in her place for that final 3.5 year period. We're watching the fulfillment of Bible prophecy right before our very eyes, folks. And the Bible says the United States is not going to be part of the world government, Revelation 13, and that we're going to stand with Israel all the way to the end. Can you see that happening today? Donald Trump, President of the United States, standing in the face of the international community and saying, it doesn't matter what you guys think, this is the right thing to do. The United States and the Israel against the world is really what it is. And that's exactly what the Bible says the situation is going to be moving into the final few years just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. We're watching that happen as we speak. Now, also, the U.S. aligning itself with the biblical position on Jerusalem. That's it. Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is biblical. In Genesis, God called Abraham to go to the Promised Land, the land known today as the nation of Israel. And from this one man, every family on the earth would be blessed. He would be a blessing, and anyone who blessed him would be blessed. Anyone who cursed him would be cursed. That's why we absolutely do not want to coerce Israel in any way to give up land for peace. They probably will end up doing that, but I promise you, we do not want to be a part of that. And it's against God's will, and you never want to go against God's will or bad things happen. So this promise of the promised land is still applicable to the offspring of Abraham, the nation of Israel. Today, all the way, 4,000 years later. Then in Genesis 15, it tells us about the promised land. Genesis 15:12 says, and when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. In the previous verses, God told Abraham to prepare a sacrifice. When Abraham did so, darkness came over him, and he fell into a trance. Then in Genesis 15:17-18, it says, and it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that was passed between the pieces of the sacrifice. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt into the great river, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So God made an unbreakable covenant forever with Abram. He had journeyed to the promised land, the land of Israel, and this promise is still just as valid today as it ever has been. For 4,000 years, God said, I promise this, I make this covenant with you forever. And that promise is still valid today. And then also God said, I will put my name in Jerusalem forever. 1 Kings 9:3 says, and the Lord said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house which thou hast built, to put my name there forever, and mine eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually. 2 Chronicles 7:16 says, for now have I chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and mine eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. And then 2 Chronicles 33:4 says, also he had built altars in the house of the Lord, whereof the Lord had said, in Jerusalem shall my name be forever. And now you understand how important it is what Donald Trump said today. The Lord said, Abraham, I'm giving you the promise of a promised land, and I'm specifically putting my name in Jerusalem forever. Now, do you see how important what Donald Trump did today? The international community, which is propped up by Satan, Revelation 13, the dragon, give this entity its seat, power, and great authority. It's propped up by Satan. So the international community is against Israel. President Trump, President of the United States of America, I'm going to keep saying that. I'm proud of that today. We stand with Israel, and we proclaim Jerusalem as the eternal capital. God said that 4,000 years ago. He made that promise to Abraham. That promise is still just as valid today. And on December 6th, 2017, Donald Trump said that here's where the United States stands. We say that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel.
We would like to wish you a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Since this is the most wonderful time of the year and we are celebrating the birth of Jesus, we would like to share 7 awesome deals to celebrate the season with you. So we are offering up to 50% off on our most popular specials. To name a few, the Understanding the End Time DVD series, From Here to Armageddon collection, Salvation Package, and Understanding the Bible combo, each one with their companion workbooks, which includes outlines, quizzes, and answers. We are also offering a 2-year magazine subscription for just $20.17, our Super Cyber Sale for digital downloads, and the Ultimate Prophecy Package, which contains almost every product Irvin has ever produced. Don't miss out on these Christmas specials to share with your friends and family. To take advantage of these offers, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or visit endtime.com.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
So December 6th, 2017, write that down, put it on your calendar, a momentous date. Donald Trump, President of the United States, declares Jerusalem, in the eyes of the American people, Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, the eternal capital. What an awesome day. And I know many of you feel the same, or watching our social media explode after the speech saying, thank you, Mr. Trump, for proclaiming Jerusalem the capital. And, you know, it's about time. Look at all the presidents that should have done it, but didn't. And now Donald Trump has, and he's really done a lot of amazing things in his first year as president. I hope he continues for the next 7 years to do so. Now, the Promised Land, with Jerusalem as its capital, belongs to Israel. There's huge debate in the world today about that. But it's really pretty easy to tell that that's the case, especially if you know something about the Bible. That's why I would question somebody who considers themselves a Christian to say, oh, I can't believe Donald Trump did that. What do you mean? It's a biblical stance. God said, I will put my name there 37 times in the Old Testament. It's a biblical stance. And therefore, we, the United States, we don't want to be a part of Israel signing an agreement with the inhabitants of the land. It's going to happen. The Bible prophesies that it will happen, but it does not mean the United States has to be involved. We don't want to be part of that, giving up parts of the Promised Land for peace. Exodus chapter 23, verse 31 through 33 states, and I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. This is very key. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor their gods. Israel is fixing to break that. And they will pay. And they shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou shalt serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee. Israel should not trade land for peace. They're going to, and I wish they didn't. But the battle of Armageddon is going to result in, it's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people. Let's just put it like that. Numbers 33:55 says, but if ye will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that those which ye let remain of them shall be pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwell. Have you seen that today? Are the Palestinians, have they not been thorns in their eyes and pricks in their sides? Very important. So it's important for all of us to understand the importance of Donald Trump's announcement today. Today's decision for the United States to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and the relocation of the embassy is, here it is, it's setting the stage for the battle of Armageddon. And so you can see the prophetic implications of this. The prophecy of Zechariah 14, 2 through 3 foretells the invasion of Jerusalem by the international forces of the United Nations at the Battle of Armageddon. It says, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity. And the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And then the prophecy of Revelation 16:16 identifies this invasion of Jerusalem by all nations as the battle of Armageddon. It says, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. It's the only time in the only place in the whole Bible where the actual word Armageddon is mentioned. Now, make no mistake, the Battle of Armageddon will be fought over the status of the city of Jerusalem. That's why it's important that the United States declare Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and we will stand by that in the face of the international community, because at the Battle of Armageddon, all of those nations are going to come down against Jerusalem to battle, and we don't want to be among those nations, because God's going to destroy those armies that come down against her. You see how important the prophetic implications are of today's announcement. We want to stand with Israel and proclaim Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, and we don't ever want to go down to battle against that. And so, I tell you what, let me give you a little more history real quick. The history of the dispute over Jerusalem. because it goes back several thousand years. When David became king over Israel around 1000 BC, Israel's capital was located in Hebron, 19 miles south of Jerusalem. After reigning from Hebron for 7 years, David conquered the city of Jebus, home of the Jebusites, and really making it Israel's new capital. He renamed the city Jerusalem. David's son, King Solomon, built Israel's first temple on the Temple Mount, which David had purchased for a place of sacrifice from Araunah, the Jebusite, for 50 shekels of silver. It's found in 2 Samuel 24:24, the threshing floor of Araunah. When the temple was completed in 968 BC, God made a pronouncement to Solomon that said that forever determined the course of history. It's recorded in 1 Kings 9:3. God said, "And the Lord said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication." I just read this. "That thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house, which thou hast built," the first temple, "to put my name there forever." It's unquestionable where he was talking about. Where was the first temple built? On the Temple Mount. Where was the second temple built? On the Temple Mount. And that's where the third temple will stand. God said, "I will put my name there forever, and mine eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually." And then in 1 Kings 11:36, God enlarged upon this promise to include the entire city of Jerusalem as the place where he would place his name. "And unto his son will I give one tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there." Now, when God announced that he would place his name in Jerusalem, Satan heard it, and the struggle for control over Jerusalem began. There have been more wars fought over the city of Jerusalem, get this, than any other city on the face of the planet. And it's just a big bunch of rocks. I mean, just to go look at it, it's a bunch of rocks. It's just rocks everywhere and weeds and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, God said, "I'm going to put my name on that rock. And this is how it's going to be. Whether you guys like it or not, and it's never going to change. That's where and Satan said, "That's where you want my name? That's where I want my name." And they've been battling ever since. There are much more beautiful places on earth. But at the end of the day, that's where God chose. So we see that the struggle over Jerusalem is more than it's more than a political conflict. It's more than the secular description that I gave earlier. It's a spiritual battle between God and Satan, between light and darkness. And that's what the Battle of Armageddon is going to be fought over. Jerusalem remained the capital of Israel until 586 BC, when God allowed Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, to carry the Jews into captivity because of their idolatry. They backslid, in other words. And after 70 years of captivity in Babylon, God allowed them to return to the Jews to return to Jerusalem, the city where God had chose to place his name. And then Jerusalem then continued to be the capital of the Jewish people until 70 AD, when Rome destroyed the city and the temple. So the Roman Emperor Hadrian banished Jews from Jerusalem in 135 AD, and as an insult to the Jews, changed the name of the land of Israel to Palestine, the same word as Philistine. And his intention was to eradicate the Jewish people once and for all. And for almost the next 2,000 years, the Jewish people were scattered throughout the nations, but there was an element in Israel all the way through. A lot of people think, well, all the Jews were driven out of the land. No, there's been a faction of Jews there the whole time. However, religious Jews prayed 3 times a day, even though they were scattered all over the place, with their faces towards Jerusalem, for the return to Jerusalem and restoration of their temple there. For 2,000 years, the parting salutation of Jews to each other was, "Next year in Jerusalem." They never forgot the promise. After Hitler's horrible Holocaust, during which 6 million Jews perished, the Jewish people began to return to the Promised Land, and really in increasing numbers. And then conflict between Jews and Arabs over the land, of course, escalated. On November 29, 1947, the United Nations voted to partition the Promised Land, creating an Arab state and a Jewish state. They declared Jerusalem an open city under United Nations control. The Jews, thrilled really at having a homeland after 2,000 years, accepted the partition plan, even though the territory granted them really only a very small portion of the Promised Land given to them by God's promise to Abraham. And the Arabs rejected the partition. They could have had it then, but they rejected it, launching a war to destroy the newborn nation of Israel before it could really breathe its first breath. And the resulting conflict became known as Israel's War of Independence. So you see what's going on here is that God promised Abraham 4,000 years ago, I'll give you this land all the way forever. My name will be in Jerusalem. And over time, the 7 years of exile, when they went into Babylonian captivity, they came back. Solomon built the first temple. When they came back out of Babylonian captivity, Zerubbabel built a second temple. It all focuses on Jerusalem. And a big majority of the prophecies concerning the second coming of Jesus Christ focus on Jerusalem. And the final battle fought on earth, the war of Gog and Magog, the battle of Armageddon, Ezekiel 38 and 39, Revelation 19, Revelation 16:16. They're all the battle of Armageddon. It's the final war on earth. And it's not just a political war. What it all boils down to is a spiritual conflict. God said, I will put my name there. Satan said, well, if that's where you want your name, it wasn't New York. Even though New York's a pretty cool city. It wasn't Moscow. It wasn't Paris. It wasn't Honolulu. It wasn't somewhere in Texas. I got to add Texas. It wasn't Dallas. It was Jerusalem. And so there have been more wars fought over that city than any other city throughout history. Why? Because it's been the battle of good versus evil, Satan versus God, which is laughable, really. Satan can't really fight against God. But honestly, that's what's going to happen at the Battle of Armageddon. The armies of the world are going to come down, of the world government, will come down against Jerusalem to battle. And it's going to culminate in between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives in the Kidron Valley. That's where the Bible says the blood will flow to the horse bridles, right there in Jerusalem. That's what the Battle of Armageddon is going to be fought over. So you can see how important the United States recognizing Jerusalem as the capital is in God's eyes in the end time.
Turn your scriptures from black and white into color. Experience the footsteps of Jesus. Understand Bible prophecy that is coming to pass right now. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter and the End Time team this spring 2018 for a life-changing trip to Israel and Jordan. Mark your calendar for April 26th through May 11th for this amazing journey. Call 1-800-END-TIME, that's 1-800-363-8463 and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel-tour to receive your information today.
End Time survives on the goodness of God, product sales, and donations from our wonderful partners. If you find End Time to be a blessing to your life, consider us in your year-end giving for 2017. Our End Time team cannot reach the world alone, but with our partners and the God we serve, nothing is impossible. To be a part of this great cause, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or visit endtime.com/give.
So let me finish my little history lesson here and bring you right up to today. If you remember that when a ceasefire was reached in 1949, temporarily ending the hostilities, Israel controlled the western part of Jerusalem, and Jordan, who had invaded in an attempt to destroy Israel, controlled Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. This was in 49, remember, and East Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount. And then on January 23rd, 1950, the Israeli Knesset passed a resolution stating that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. Well, by 1967, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser felt like Egypt was strong enough to wipe Israel off the map. And he signed a mutual defense treaty with Jordan and Syria and prepared for the destruction of the state of Israel. And most of you will know, if you remember your history in school, the war only lasted 6 days. It's called the 6 Days War, from June 5 to June 10th, 1967. To the world's amazement, really, Israel conquered the Golan Heights, the Sinai Desert, the entire area of Judea and Samaria, or the modern-day West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, in 6 short days. Now, if you know how big the Sinai Desert is, it's a miracle of God. Then on July 30, 1980, the Israeli Knesset passed the Jerusalem Law, annexing East Jerusalem and declaring the United Jerusalem to be the eternal, undivided capital of the state of Israel. They were the only nation that recognized that. On August 20, 1980, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 478 by 14 votes to none, with 1 abstention, the United States, which declared the Jerusalem Law was null and void and must be rescinded. Well, that resolution called upon member states of the United Nations to withdraw their diplomatic missions from the city. And within weeks, 11 of the 13 states that had embassies in Jerusalem shut them down, and the last 2 were closed in 2006. Then on November 15, 1988, Yasser Arafat issued the Palestinian Declaration of Independence on Palestinian territory, at the same time claiming Jerusalem as its capital. That's the question. Why did the Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their capital? Had it ever been their capital? No, absolutely not. Not once throughout all of history. So why then did they insist on Jerusalem as their capital when they knew it had been Israel's capital since 1000 BC? Well, the Palestinians understand that Jerusalem is the heart and soul of Israel. If the Israelis agree to give up Jerusalem, then they're saying that God's promises about placing His name in Jerusalem are nothing but really 4,000-year-old myths. They're fairy tales, something somebody made up. And if God's promise concerning Jerusalem is not true, then God's promise concerning the Promised Land is not valid either. Therefore, the founding of the nation of Israel in 1948 was illegitimate. So, you wonder why Israel is going to fight to the death to protect Jerusalem? Because of that very fact right there. They know that their existence depends upon it. And of course, we know scripturally they're in the right. They should be there. And so the United Nations really, in saying, oh, they're null and void and they shouldn't have access to that, they are against God. Let's just face it. And they're going to be fighting against God eventually at the Battle of Armageddon. Think of it. On December 23rd, 2016, the United Nations said the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied, they say occupied, since 1967. They call it occupied territory. I'm saying it's disputed territory. And if you talk to the Jews in Israel, they'll say it's disputed. It is disputed. It's Israel's. God promised it to them. But people that don't believe that, they'll say, well, that's occupied territory. And that included East Jerusalem. And they said that it had no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law. Now look at that terminology compared to the Bible. Now which one would you go with? Honestly, it's an easy question for me. To some, it's not so easy. Well, the United Nations says, come on, Dave. No, I would say, but the Bible says. No, we're going with the Bible. That's what Donald Trump did today. He said, come on, Jerusalem is Israel's capital. Let's face it. It has been for 3 millennia now. And that's what we're going to go with. And he did, and he took a stand. And I'm very thankful that he did. And now, just last Thursday, the UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly, again, I'm going to tell you this, it's very important, to disavow Israel's ties to Jerusalem. The United Nations has nothing to do with the Bible. They don't understand the Bible in any way, shape, or form. They don't care about God. They don't love God. They don't listen to God. It's a humanitarian organization. And that's why they will end up fighting against God at the Battle of Armageddon. So what is the international community or world government saying right now about all this? Well, clearly, in all these resolutions against Israel, they're saying they don't care about what God said. They're saying that their word supersedes what was plainly said by God many times in the Bible. And this is a graphic illustration, really, folks, of the anti-God stance that the United Nations, and it shows why the Antichrist will ultimately rule over the world government centered at the UN. It's all propped up by Satan. So, at the end, what's Israel and the UN, what are they going to do about Jerusalem? Well, the Bible prophesies that a temporary or an interim agreement will be concluded between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I want to read you something that I come across right before I walked in on the program. Lieberman, who is the defense minister of Israel, said that the most we can hope for now as a result of Trump's speech recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, he says that while praising President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman told the Jerusalem Post that a final status resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was not currently possible. Well, I totally agree, because they're never going to give up Jerusalem. I just told you why. But he said, get this, what is possible is a long-term interim agreement. An interim agreement lasting, I don't know, maybe 7 years? That's not going to be a permanent agreement. It's going to be an interim agreement. Something where they'll say, hey, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't get all we want, but let's get an interim agreement signed and we'll deal with Jerusalem in the future. And what's going to happen is they're going to do that. And then at the end, when Israel won't give up Jerusalem, that's when the world governing armies are going to invade, and we're going to have the Battle of Armageddon. This just came on right before I walked in here. They're saying as a result of what Donald Trump did, we're not going to be able to have final status agreements because of Jerusalem. The United States, the biggest player on the playground, just recognized Jerusalem as our capital. So we're not going to be able to have a final status agreement, but all we can really hope for now is an interim agreement. That's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. Daniel 9:27. The Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for a 7-year period, an interim agreement. I'm telling you, we're in the end times. I'm almost not able to contain myself, because we're there. I was clowning around with my cohort in crime here, Doug Norvell, and I said, Doug, you realize, I finally realized today we're living in the end time. And he started laughing, because I know we're living in the end time. I can prove it so many ways, but this is one of the biggest things I've seen in my lifetime. It is huge. We're marching step by step by step right towards the Battle of Armageddon, the second coming of Jesus Christ, the rebuilding of the third temple, this peace agreement. I mean, we're on the cusp of all this. And it's so exciting. And at 12 o'clock, I wanted to go on and do the program then rather than wait till 3 o'clock, honestly. But, so, what's going to be concluded? There's going to be an interim peace agreement concluded between the Israelis and the Palestinians. That's what Avigdor Lieberman is talking about. And that's really, it's going to be supported by the United Nations. And the agreement's going to create a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. The Temple Mount's going to be placed under a sharing arrangement so that Muslims and Jews can both worship there. And Israel will be allowed to build her third temple on the Temple Mount. And this agreement, it's going to be temporary or an interim agreement, because one issue is going to be left unresolved. Israel is going to refuse to divide or share Jerusalem. Now you know why. They know their very existence depends upon them defending Jerusalem. And I promise you, they're willing to fight to the death to defend that. And the Palestinians, they're not going to sign a final agreement without their capital in Jerusalem. So the issue of Jerusalem is going to be put on hold while implementing the rest of the agreement. And it appears that the time frame for revisiting the Jerusalem issue, Daniel 9:27, is a 7-year period. When that 7 years expires, the Palestinians are going to press the issue of a capital in Jerusalem. And the UN is going to side with the Palestinians, demand that Israel bow to the Palestinians' demands. Israel's going to refuse, resulting in the military invasion of Israel by world community forces. And folks, that's going to be the Battle of Armageddon. Zechariah 14:2 clearly describes this invasion. It says, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, houses rifled, women ravished. Half of the city is going to go into captivity, Jerusalem, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city." All nations coming against Jerusalem can only be fulfilled by the United Nations or like a NATO force. And the UN is the only force on earth that represents all the nations of the world. Notice in this verse that half of Jerusalem is going to fall to government forces, indicating that all of Jerusalem was under Israel control through the entirety of the 7 years. It's very important. So what's going to motivate the United Nations to come against Jerusalem to battle? It's those resolutions that I talked about earlier in the program. Resolution 2334 and the resolutions that were passed the other day, last Thursday in the United Nations, stating that whatever Israel does in Jerusalem is null and void. Well, that's kind of crazy, because they're going straight in the face of God. If they would just, I wish they'd let Irvin, Baxter, and myself come up and teach them a Bible study at the next UN General Assembly in September. That would be awesome. Then we could finally, they might say, well, man, we can't go against Israel because that's going to bring about the Battle of Armageddon, this, that, and the other. Of course, the chances of that happening is slim to none. God can do anything He wants, but I don't know if they would allow Irvin or myself to come and do that. At any rate, I just wanted today, December 6, 2017, to let you guys know the secular and the prophetic implications of Trump's speech today, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and stating that we will start the process of moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So much prophetic implication, and beyond that, in my eyes, I'm just proud to be an American today, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.